So in this video, we're going to be talking about volume and surface area of solids. So here they want us to find the surface area and the volume of the rectangular prisms. So we have this example here and we have this one. Now, surface area, when you're dealing with the rectangular prism, you're always going to use this formula. Now, this may look like a lot, but it really isn't. Think about it. So here, when it says 2 length times the width, let's say I had this length and I had this width right here. That's accounting for this solid along the bottom. And the reason we have a 2 here is because we see this exact same solid on the top of our prism. So really all we have to do is find the area of one of these and multiply it by 2, and that will account for the bottom and the top of that solid. And then the same thing is true if I have the length and the height. So if I had this length and this height of 9, that's accounting for this front face of the prism, and then the 2 would account for the back side you see along here, and then the width and the height, that would be this side piece here, and then twice would be the other side piece we see over here. All right, so that's how the foundation of the formula works. So let's put this into practice. We want the surface area. Well, since we're given all 3, length, width, and height, we can just plug these values into our formula here. So we know this surface area is going to be 2 times the length and the width. So length and then width, we'll just say, let's actually label these. Let's call this the length, we'll call 7 the width, and we'll call 9 the height. That way we make sure that we're clear when we're plugging everything in. So we have the length, which we're saying is 13. The width we're calling 7. We are now going to add the length of 13 times the height of 9 plus, and I'm going to come down here because I don't want to run into my area over here with volume. The width we're saying is 7 and the height of 9. So here we just have one formula. Looks like a lot, but really all we're doing is we're accounting for all 6 sides at one time. So here we're just going to plug this on our calculator. And our answer is going to be 542. So the surface area here is going to be 542, and we'll say square feet. All right, let's try volume. Volume is length, width, and height. Now, the difference between volume and surface area. I always tell my students, surface area, imagine that you're painting the prism. And I have to paint the front, I have to paint the back, the top, the bottom, and both sides. So that would I would use surface area to figure out how much paint I would need for that. Volume, imagine that I'm filling this up with water. So I want water to go along the inside and then to fill up this prism. All right? So volume here, that's why we're only using the length, width, and height. There's no adding other sides. So that is going to be 13 times 7 times 9. And here my volume is going to be 819 cubic feet. Now, the reason we say feet cubed with volume and feet squared with area, think about this. Here, this is 13 feet times 7 feet. Well, think about that with variables. 13 times 7, we know that's going to give us 91. Well, what's feet times feet? Feet squared. And then I did the same thing here, right? Feet times feet, feet squared. And when you add, say, variables with the same exponent, remember the base stays the same as well as the exponent. So if I said, what's 3x squared plus 2x squared, I get 5x squared. Same thing here. When I get this value, feet squared, plus this value, feet squared, plus this value, feet squared, my answer is feet squared. Here, this is 13 feet times 7 feet times 9 feet. So 13 times 7 times 9 is 819, and then feet times feet times feet is feet cubed. So that's an easy way to think about it, of why we square one and cube the other. All right, down here on the bottom, we want the surface area of this rectangular prism. We're using our same formula. So here, let's call this the width, we'll call this the length, and we'll call this the height. So we have 2 length times width, so that's going to be 12 times 8, plus 2 times length times height. So length we said was 12. The height we're going to say 39. Plus 2 width times height. So 2 times the width, 8, times the height of 39. So here my surface area, we'll do this on our calculator. That's going to be 1,752. And this will be inches squared. Our volume will be our length times our width times our height. And that's going to give us 3,744 cubic inches. Okay, so this is a rectangular prism. Let's look at some different types of solids. So in these 2 examples, we're still finding the volume and the surface area, but doing it with a cylinder. Okay, so the surface area, let's talk about this. 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. So 2 pi r squared, let's think about this. Pi r squared, that's very familiar. That's the area of a circle. And here's one circle down here. And then it says 2. Well, there's a bottom circle and a top circle. And then we have 2 pi r h. Okay, well, this is a very interesting piece because this actually represents the area of the height of this cylinder. So imagine if I took this cylinder and I cut it in half and then I rolled it out. It would create some rectangle. And here, this section of my formula will actually tell me the area of that rectangle. So that can be explained in depth in a separate video, but right now we're just recalling that. So the surface area, 2 pi r squared h. So here my surface area, let's say, is 2 pi times my radius squared. Well, my radius is 11, so this will be 11 centimeters squared plus 2 pi 11 times my height of 26. And I forgot my measurements here, but we'll include those in the solution. So here I will type this in on my calculator, and my answer is going to be 814 pi, and this will be squared centimeters. Now, if your teacher wants you to round to the nearest hundredth, we can write this as a decimal, and that would be 2,557.26 squared centimeters. And that would be my surface area. Again, surface area, imagine you're painting. So you got to paint the bottom, you got to paint the top, and you got to paint all around this cylinder. Okay? Now volume. Imagine this were a cup and we're filling it with water. So what's the maximum amount of water we would have here? So that would be pi, the radius squared, times our height. Let's see what we would get here. That would give us 3,146 pi centimeters squared. And if we wanted this as a decimal, that would be 883.45 squared centimeters. Okay? So here, since I've done an example with the top, I want you to pause the video and you try the example on the bottom. And let's make sure we get the same thing. So here we're going to say 2 pi r squared. Here I'm giving a diameter of 15, so the radius is half the diameter. So these are the values I should have plugged in. 7.5 is my radius, 9 as my height. The rest can be done on a calculator. And my surface area here is going to be 700 77.54, and this will be centimeters squared. Volume will be pi times 7.5 squared times 9. And my volume here, I'm getting 1,590.43, and this will be cubic centimeters. All right, let's take one more look at a different type of solid. So here, now, we've talked about rectangular prisms, we've talked about cylinders, now we're talking about cones. So now we want to find the surface area of this cone. So pi r squared, that's going to be our base of the cone, that's the area, and then pi r L. L is the slant height. So that's the slant height of this cone. And then this part, if you unraveled the bottom of this cone, this would be the area of that. So I got the area of the diagonal portion of my cone, and then pi r squared is my circular base. So here, this surface area will be pi r 7 squared plus pi r L 11.4. So here for surface area, I am getting 404.64, and this would be squared centimeters. Volume is going to be 1/3 pi r squared height. So we have pi, we know our radius is 7. Now height. Now, pay attention to this. Height is not slant height. Remember, anytime we see h, height, we're thinking this must be perpendicular with the base. So height here is this value, and we know it's perpendicular with the base. So now think, what geometric shape do we have here? We have a right triangle, so it's going to be very easy to find our height here. Since this is our hypotenuse, it'll be 11.4 squared minus 7 squared. It'll be the square root of that. So here, we're going to say the square root of 11.4 squared minus 7 squared. And that's going to give us 8.997. So it's safe to say 9. So here, we're going to call our height 9. And now we can use this to find our volume. And our volume is going to be 147 pi. This will be cubic centimeters. And if you need a decimal approximation, that is going to be 461.81 cubic centimeters. Okay, that's a cone. We're going to do the exact same thing down here. Pause the video and see if you can solve the second one. All right, here with our second example, we have pi r squared. We are missing the radius, but they gave us the diameter. The diameter is always twice the radius. So if you want to find the radius here, we're going to need to divide by 2. So my radius here is going to be 13.5. So here I have pi times the radius, 13.5 squared, plus pi times my radius, times L. L is slant height. It is not the actual height. So now I can plug these values into my calculator. My surface area here will be 1,967.89, and this will be squared centimeters. With volume, we have 1/3 pi times the radius squared times the height. And again, we don't know the height. We know the slant height. This is going to be the actual height. So again, we have 32.9 as the hypotenuse. We have 13.5 as the radius. So I'm going to need to say the square root of 32.9 minus 13.5 squared Now, I don't think I said it, but remember that 32.9 in your Pythagorean theorem, that should be squared. So we're looking at the square root of 32.9 squared minus 13.5 squared. That's going to give us 30. So here we're going to say times 30. And here our volume is going to be 5,725.55. And this will be cubic centimeters. All right, that's going to be all for this video. I hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and we'll see you all in the next video.